Welcome back to the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. For those newly joining the program, my name is Irina Zuckerman, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. With us to discuss an unusual topic related to Russia's intelligence active measure activity and its exploitation of its ideology and extremism abroad is Kseniya Kirillova, also known as Cassie, who is an analyst for the SIPA Institute specializing in Eastern European affairs. She is also a renowned counterintelligence expert, and she'll tell us about her personal experience in time. But thank you so much for joining us today, Kseniya. I'd like to begin by discussing this topic, the theory that you came up with, and that is could help us frame the further discussion and more specific detail about people, characters, and activities involved, which is how Russia exports ideologies abroad, how it manages to smear and cause divisions and character assassinate its critics and its targets abroad by promoting these ideologies. What is this theory? How does it work exactly?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. Yes, about these ideologies, it's just a part of so-called Russian informational operations. Because, we first of all, yes, if we are talking about Russian propaganda, we need to divide propaganda in some, let's say, positive sense of this word, and informational operation. Because if we promote something, for example, positive image of Russia, it's propaganda, but it's not informational operation as such. It's probably a part of it. But if we are talking about informational operations, it's kind of operations that aim to destroy Russian opponents, to create a chaos, probably to destabilize it, or to bring some people loyal to Russia to power, to weaken its opponents. So it's some destructive goal, and what I call ideologies for export, it's just one type of Russian informational operations. And yes, I mean here it's just such kind of mini ideologies, individual worldview system aimed at specific social groups. And most frequently, it's adherents of radical views groups. And these ideologies, they contradict each other, and almost all of them contradict true realities of life in Russia, but they are based on the same basic principle. And the principle is to create a certain picture of world which is maximally impress a particular social groups, and in which members of this group want to believe. And each of these ideologies presents its own image of enemy. And this enemy, it's category to which a specific group already hostile, and which generates its greatest phobias. For example, just if we are talking about America, for American left, a country, a state, a government itself, it's just the main enemy and phobias. They're afraid of corporations, they're afraid of some global conspiracy. And if you connect some people that you know, they received money from some corporation, yes, it's the main phobia. For radical rights, for example, they're afraid of some liberal antichrist, they're afraid of communists, and I understand them. I also don't like communists, but they try to when Russians use this ideology, they try to connect all think that they don't like to communists, and it's enough to this group to hate everything that you say that it's leftist, it's communist behind them, and something like this. So we came to the main point of this ideology for expert. That group already has some image of enemy, some phobias towards this enemy, and what Russia does, the key point of this ideology is connection between some things, phenomena of people that Kremlin doesn't like. I call them objects of discrediting, and this image of enemies. And that's why it's very easy for people to believe in such ideology, because people believe and they want to believe. It's if they hear something that coincides with their inner beliefs, with their worldview. Of course, they want to believe in this. They can say, "Oh, I told that. I was right." So they are ready to believe in this series. So, and of course, they could contradict each other. For example, it's also, I saw this in the United States, a very clear example how they promoted the policy in Ukraine among Russian diaspora. I mean, not dissident people who comes now, old Russian diaspora, part of it, but I don't say, of course, about all diaspora, but part of it was divided for two groups who love Russia for absolutely different reasons. One, it's descendants of white guard, белогвардейцы, people who escaped Russia during Russian Civil War, and who hate communists, who miss this old Russia. Of course, they don't remember it. It's probably grandchildren of people who escaped Russia, but they maintain this culture. They maintain Russian language, and they idealize Russian Empire. And another group, the so-called communists, who missed the Soviet Union, who decided to emigrate only after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and they missed this time. And Russian propaganda worked with both these groups because they are groups of risk, because they idealized Russia, and they was hostile to the United States. But when Russia tried to explain that Ukraine was a false state, for one group, Russian propaganda told that communists created Ukraine and its communist project, and that's why it shouldn't exist. For other groups, they told that it was imperialist Western project, and only communists were able to integrate Ukraine into Soviet Union. So they tell absolutely the opposite. For one Russian diaspora, both serious. They spread it on Russian language, and sometimes they meet each other, members of these groups, and they hate each other. But we see that same method, which Russia connected to different image of enemy, absolutely opposite to each other for these opposite social groups. And yes, this information came from Russian consulate for both groups. And what I mean, that the weak point of these ideologies for expert is just a connection between objects of discrediting and beliefs, phobias, image of enemies that specific group already had. So, and if we want to counter this propaganda, it's the main mistake what people do. First of all, they try to check information. It doesn't work if people want to believe in this, and especially if it's coincide with the beliefs. But it's impossible to change deep beliefs of these groups, because if we are talking about radical views, it should be a special work of working with some of prophylactic, of prevention radicals behavior, with psychological, with social workers. We cannot do it ourselves. We cannot work with it. And if the most important, we will talk about it further when we don't even talk about people of radical views, when we talk about ordinary people who really faced with some in domestic real problems in the United States, like government corruption, like propaganda, local propaganda, or government lie, or something like this, because Russia cannot invent something, cannot create problems. It just uses the problems that already exist. And of course, it's not our goal to change people's views, or especially to change people's experience. It's impossible, because people could be absolutely right in their own experience. But what we can influence is just a connection between, which a false connection which Russian propaganda creates between some beliefs or phenomena and these wrong conclusions, a wrong object. So, for example, or another method that we can use, first of all, sometimes Russia operates under the false flag.
Mhm.
So if some social group adequately understands what's going on in Russia, sometimes it's just enough to show that Russia is behind this. But it's very important that if we show this, we should have real evidence, because we already see some not good tendency, what I saw in Russia before repression and before the war, before 2014. It's all this started from absolutizing of external threat. When government tried to justify its own problems, its own corruptions, its own mistakes to foreign influence, and started to label its critics like foreign agents. And first of all, it started not officially, it started from propaganda first, and then it became official. So, of course, it's just discredits the topic of Russian threat if we try to politicize this and just to label any unpleasant information as Russian disinformation, like it was with Hunter Biden case, for example. It turned out to be true about his notebook, about his drug problems and so on. But yes, they label it, Democrats label it as a Russian disinformation in the very beginning. And of course, it harms the topic of national security at all. But if you have real evidence, because sometimes it's obvious real Russian interference. For example, even some memes were created in Russia and only after that were translated into English. And if you can just to bring this evidence to show that, look, Russian propaganda created it, it's invaded, and only after that it was repeated into American media, and it was already refuted in the US, but still spread here. So if we really have evidence, of course, it's useful to show that, yes, this piece of information was created in Russia. And another thing, just if another important point, just to break this connection. For example, if American government lies to you, even if it has corruption, it doesn't mean that you should believe Russian government, which you are not corrupted. So it's wrong conclusion. It doesn't follow from each other. Or, for example, some people who criticized Trump when he was president, they were not leftists. They were Republicans, old Republicans. They had no liberal agenda. They just were concerned about his actions from the national security point. It's nothing to do with communist or something like this. So just to break this false connection, what they create. And if for some social group Russia is okay, if they think that Russia is ideal, even with such groups we can work somehow. For example, we can shows them how Russian propaganda contradicts realities inside Russia. Because, one of main points of Russian propaganda is that Russia is a Christian state. But actually, majority of Russia, they consider Russian Orthodox Church, the same way how they perceived Communist Party in the late Soviet Union, that it's something that should be, it's something that can help us to identify ourselves as Russian. But they're not Christian, but they don't know anything about Christian religion. And there are a lot of repressions in Russia against not only Protestants, against even Orthodox priests who pray for peace, who are against the war, and we know that. So it's Russia, for example, to show that Russia is not Christian state. Many people of right views here in the United States, they advocate for more independence from federal government. But Russia is totalitarian state. There are no independence of regions and so on. Just to show that Russia, it's very different from image of Russia, which Russian propaganda tries to create. Because for people of left views, Russia tries to present itself like almost a communist state. Of course, it's not true. It's not even a social state. For people of radical views, it tries to present itself like Christian states. It's not true. It's big problems with freedom of religion in Russia. It's something like this.
Well, you made a lot of interesting points. I want to go back to actually one of the earlier points it made about Russia's outreach to different diaspora groups. First of all, what is the importance of these diaspora groups with Russia? Why does it bother reaching out to these, people who've exited Russia a very long time ago? Some of them have grown up. Why does it what is their interest in influencing them at all? And what do they hope will come out of it in terms of their narrative building in the West?
The problem is I don't want to demonize Russian diaspora because it's absolutely not true when some people say that Russian diaspora is infiltrated a lot of Russian engines. It's I wouldn't tell that it's bullshit, but the problem is that Russians and Russian intelligence, first of all, are interested in Americans. And in people who have some influence in the United States, who can influence on other Americans. And so immigrants, especially who came a long time ago, or probably some of them already was born here. Of course, they're interested, they're object of interest of Russian intelligence only because, actually, not because they're Russian, because they're already Americans. And to influence on them, it just one of approaches of Russia to Americans. It's not probably even the main approach. So we shouldn't think that the Russians diaspora or Russians nationality is some kind of risk. No, because for example, people who come now from Russia, most of them are dissidents. Yes, some of them, it has Russian agents, but these Russian agents, of course, cannot influence on anything. In the United States, they probably snitch who report to the FSB something about Russian diaspora itself, because FSB tries to watch Russian diaspora abroad. So such kind of agents could be, but they're not recruited by propaganda. They were recruited in Russia and then sent here to the United States. So it's different type of agents. Yes, every diaspora, Chinese, Russian, and every diaspora of totalitarian state has this type of agent, but this type of snitches, this type of agents, they are mostly dangerous for Russian diaspora itself, not for the United States. If we are talking about recruiting Americans, this approach to Russian diaspora is just one of approaches. And they just use some ideology motivation for these people because it's a group of risk. It doesn't mean that all these people will be Russian agents. Sometimes they are used for some not so serious purposes. Like, I don't know, let's say to promote Russian propaganda, to influence on the society. It's not the main goal, because the main goal, of course, to influence on serious politicians. But sometimes they just use these people as useful idiots. Who can just to sign some petitions to congressmen to about lifting Russian sanctions, or to promote the views among Americans, or something like this. But some of these people, because so I would not say that they are all Russian agents, of course not. But these people who are ideology motivated, who are pro-Russian, they are of course a huge group of risk. Probably 19% of these will be used only in some, like useful idiots, blindly in some small influence operations. For example, Immortal Regiment. So many people wrote about this, but it doesn't influence Americans. A lot of Americans don't understand what is that. It's not American tradition to remember World War II so strongly. So probably they just steal money, a lot of money for this event. But really, I don't think that it creates so big influence like on post-Soviet states, for example, where of course it's an important part of local agenda. But the problem with group of risk, as well as Americans, that some people who have access to some important information, probably dual use technologies, probably financial information, probably who even works for government or for military, because it's a lot of not a lot of, but some people. I would not think that people who that the government traitors who work for Russia, they are motivated by ideology. No, it's mostly by money. But in the army, for example, some military guys, they admire Russia. They really can love Russia. It's say we were allies during World War II, and some they probably have some romantic world view on Russia. So, but practice shows that much more effective for Russia to recruit Americans for money than try to find valuable source among Russian immigrants. Of course, they try to find valuable source there because these people are Americans. They received American education, they're American citizens. Of course, they can give them something useful. Of course, they try ideological motivation if they can do it. Why not? But my practice show that the most valuable the assets came not from this group of risk. One time I really worked, I investigated a case of which probably well-known Charles McGonigal suppressed result of this investigation.
And we'll get to Charles McGonagall a little bit later in the conversation. I'm very curious. I have some questions about that, but let's talk about
Yes, and I also have a lot of questions about Charles McGonigal and his successors, believe me. But about this case, yes, sending dual-use technologies, before last sanctions, it was even legally. But a person who lobbied this contract, it was legal contract at that time, he was initially from Ukraine. He was Ukrainian nationality, naturalized American, already American citizen, but Yes, he was Ukrainian, not Russian, and his motivation was mostly he was sincerely pro-Russian, and what influenced his views, I don't know. But it's a good example how this not even Russian language diaspora that it exists some group of risk, but probably only one or two from this group could become for them valuable, really valuable sources. But if we talk about so they just try to involve many people in this environment and to find someone valuable in this environment if we are talking about real intelligence. But you know, because this approach doesn't work with Americans but works with Russia sometimes. But anyway, they use ideology's motivation only against Americans, as we told about radical left or radical right. They use also ideology motivations the same way they do it with diaspora. But the problem is for any intelligence, I guess, that such kind of useful idiots, how they call them, by the way, it's not my term, it was Lenin, Bolsheviks' term to call them useful idiots. But these useful idiots, they the problem with that it's hard to find a valuable source among them. Because it's rare case that such a person will work for government, for example, or we will have some security clearance or something like this. And for people who have this knowledge and clearance, such kind of propaganda simply doesn't work. So yes, probably sometimes they could have luck like with scientists, because scientists could be very smart in their sphere, but very naive about the whole picture of the world. Yes, it's like in case I investigated, it was a scientist, so that was easier for him. But they but with Americans, it works better just to bribe people for money, like we know in Charles McGonigal case. And we know that the main problem, not Charles McGonigal himself, but also how the whole system covered him up. And believe me, this kind of treason and corruption is much more dangerous than poor, useful idiots from Russian diaspora who believed that the Russian Empire was a great country.
And that brings me to my next point, which is the mechanisms of by which the Russian intelligence identifies its targets, whether it's in the FBI, like Charles McGonigal, or anywhere else institutional and structurally. And before we get to Charles's case, I want to discuss the general workings of this machinery, of this exploitation of ideologies, because on the one hand, it's very what you're telling me is that not only is Russia now exporting ideologies to the West and to other countries, but they're also turning fringe risk groups, such as the
with ideologies, they mostly want to change public opinion, to bring some loyal people to them to power. So if they, let's say, just to finish about this, because it's not so simple question, is it effective or not effective?
Sure.
It's not too much effective for searching valuable sources. Yes. If we talk about classic intelligence.
Sure, information gathering.
About informational operations and changing local opinion, it depends. Because example with Immortal Regiment, it doesn't has much influence in the United States, but it has influence in post-Soviet states. So if Russia found some weak point of people's expectations, in people's sentiments, in people beliefs, Yes, it could influence on public opinion deeply. And sometimes, yes, it could be dangerous. But if they don't know how to work and use some small marginal ideologies and marginal groups, yes, they cannot do it. So we should um, um, watch every case separately, because sometimes in some cases we see that yes, Russia could influence on specific social opinion. In the other situation, we can see that Russia tried to influence, but domestic problems of the United States they influence on this situation much more than any external uh, interferes. So every case about public opinion, we can assess separately was it effective or not. For example, now American society has so many problems and divided so much that, of course, if we blame Russia in everything, it sounds like propaganda, because it's obviously for everyone that America has its real problems, and these real problems really influence on people's decision. Yes. And to blame Russia in everything, that's exactly what Putin did when he blamed CIA in all internal Russian problems. It's the same kind of propaganda, of course, and it's very disturbing because it discredits the real threat of national security. But what Russia really does, it exploits these problems, uses it for its own purposes, and tries to draw people to wrong conclusions based on these problems. That's what Russia does. It could create probably some fake, but it cannot create a problem itself. Of course, it makes problems which already exist. And I think that the most dangerous thing about national security now, it's not to recognize these problems, because if people see that the own governments lies to them, that the own government is corrupted, of course they will believe to Tucker Carlson and Putin. And it's very hard to divide these topics, that yes, your own government could be corrupted, but it doesn't mean that you have to believe to the hostile government. Especially because every country has its own interests, and Putin doesn't care about Americans. Why he would do this? So about local corruption, what you asked me about Charles McGonigal, I don't know how they recruited him.
So just to for those who don't know about Charles McGonigal, he was one of the top publicly known Russian assets. This is not
He
just
was
some
probably the main high level, the most high level FBI officials in the whole American history who was arrested. He was a
he's
head
not
of
some useful
counterintelligence.
idiot. This is an actual intelligence asset. This is an actual. He was an FBI counterintelligence point man in New York, the head of the entire
Head
division.
of counterintelligence, yes, special agent in charge. He was. Okay, I will tell what I know about Charles McGonigal, because it's important for the whole national security, and important for our topic now, because I don't know how he was recruited. I even don't know where, because I don't believe in this indictment that after his retirement he just was one time helped Deripaska. I am sure it's bullshit, because I have my personal experience with Charles McGonigal. I don't know about conditions of recruitment, but I know very well conditions which helped him to continue his illegal activity, and conditions which make it much easier for Russians to recruit another targets, including high-level targets. And there was one main condition, one word: impunity. Total impunity. Not Russian nationality, not Russian passport provokes treason. As I said, they approached Americans as well as they approached Russian immigrants. And radical Americans, for example, if we talk about ideology, the same target group as a radical part of Russian diaspora. But if we talk, but these people cannot be serious assets. But if we talk about American government, the only real thing that can prevent treason is transparency and responsibility. Now, in this case, Charles McGonigal approached me in summer, in June of 2017, and asked me for help because I already was well-known expert, and moreover, at that time I even was not so expert as mostly journalists who worked with sources. So I conducted serious investigation, international investigation about the Russian threat, exactly. So, but there were international investigation. I worked with sources abroad from different countries, and it was the FBI who involved me in the local problems because I first of all, local office approached me, and I warned them that I'm not a snitch. I don't have any connections with, didn't have any connections with pro-Russian part of diaspora. I work with international sources. But they were so impressed of my work that they anyway turned to me. They knew that I didn't have information on local cases, but they turned to me as expert analyst. They gave me the materials for analysis, the counterintelligence cases, so it was no problem with trust or something like this. I worked on the materials on the counterintelligence cases. And when McGonigal approached me, he also asked me for analysis. Before I told that analysis on cases he worked, on, but now I am not so sure, because probably he asked me on analysis of cases he worked on for the FBI, probably he asked for Russians, who knows now. But he asked me for analysis, let's say so. And during this work, just shortly, because I think we don't have time to explain everything, but he lied to me constantly. He destroyed all my relationship with local offices. He suppressed results of a really important investigation for American national security. And when I started to ask questions, he started to lie, contradict himself. Guys, for that time, I spent almost 2 years in counterintelligence. And of course, I saw these contradictions when a person says one day one thing, the next day the opposite. He was a pathological liar, and he probably forgot what he told before. So anyway, and I started to ask more questions. I had some acquaintance friends among American CIA officers. I started to ask them what was going on. And one time he finally confessed to me that all our relationship was informal. So he never followed any procedure when he shared materials and his investigations with me. He never reported about this connection. So what he said informal, for him it's meant illegally. Because I didn't do anything illegal. I'm a civilian person. He asked me to write analysis. I did analysis. That's it. Yes. So, but for him, yes, it was a crime. And then he deliberately started to put me in mortal danger in order to hide. I didn't know about other his crimes, but he was so in panic every time when someone from his colleagues contacted me and asked me for my expertise. He was so afraid that he yelled on me. He was in panic. He started hysterics, and he demanded that I shouldn't tell any of FBI agent about him. Just a small reminder, he did it even after his retirement, but lying to federal agents, it's a federal crime. So he was a civilian person, they were active duty. When he demanded not to tell about him, that means that he asked me to commit a federal crime, to lie to the FBI, by the way. Yes, so when he Or, for example, he asked me to do one thing that I told him, Charlie, the Russians will kill me for that. And this thing could totally expose my relation with him for Russian. And he agreed that, yes, they will kill you. But the next day he asked the same thing again. Not just. So it's not my fantasies. He admitted himself that they will kill me, and they asked about it. So yes, I was in shock. Probably now I can at least say something about this, but can you imagine, I was just an immigrant girl from Urals province. Yes, I had some analytical talents, but I'm civilian. And I saw that he put me in mortal danger, lied to me, used me, acted illegally, and I couldn't find protection from him. He destroyed all my connections. He suppressed important investigation. He always acted like a criminal, but it was just a beginning. I refused to do what he asked me to do. And after that, because of my work, they involved me in this work, one Russian spy approached me, and he asked me to help him. And of course, I had to communicate with the FBI, and again, it was just after McGonigal's retirement. Of course, I already didn't trust them. I didn't want to talk to them, but I had to because of this serious case. This guy, one Russian guy, wanted to come to the United States, and I was alone against him. It was first time in my life that such situation, and when they approached me, local office, of course, I was a nurse, and I told everything about McGonigal and my suspicions against McGonigal. I told them directly. I even sent them my email after that he acted illegally. At least I don't know why, but he hid something. He just sabotaged investigation. By the way, about investigation, you can say that you're a silly girl and you don't know what is important or what is not important. Probably your investigation wasn't important. No, guys. It was Charles McGonigal. As I said, he doesn't know how to lie. He constantly contradicts himself. So about this investigation, he told me that it was extremely important. He told me that it's very important to know about this investigation to local office. I still have his email where he praised me and told me that it's a great job, it's extremely important. And he promised to tell about this someone, but he didn't do it. So it's not my opinion that it was important investigation. It was his opinion. And with such contradictions, I faced every time. Lies and lies and lies. And when I started to ask questions of him, he realized that I already suspected him. He laughed me in face and told me, "No one will believe you. You are from Russia." Yes, I was really sick, physically sick, because I saw that I became a victim and I couldn't find protection. He was high-level FBI. I was no one. But when I faced with this case with Russian spy after his retirement, of course, I shared everything about McGonigal, what he did, how he lied, how he acted illegally, how he put me in mortal danger, and I still couldn't understand why he did it. After that, the real nightmare started. To put it shortly, all about half of a year, I had to fight alone against Russian spy, and no one helped me. No one. And they made the situation even worse. They knew who I was. They knew everything details of the chaos. It was not a problem with trust. Nothing. They bullied me. They behaved like mafia, like fraud. Really, because they asked me information. They asked me to investigate this case more. They promised to help every day. And the fake promises started to look finally like real harassment, because 3 offices did it. One office finally officially said that they will not help, but 2 other offices started to do the same, and they used intermediaries, civilian person, who conveyed the false message. They really liked it like criminals, because if I would sue civilian intermediaries. And they could deny everything. They could say, oh, he's a fraud, he's crazy. We never told him to say this. So civilian intermediaries delivered me these fake promises. And these civilian intermediaries, they were not such crazy person from the street. I knew these people. It's people whom I knew personally from this intelligence community. They used people whom I knew to deliver their fake promises. Then it started real bullying, or attempts to fabricate something against me. For example, they knew for sure that I never helped this spy. I even warned all his victims. And they knew this, but they started to ask if I help something to him. Promises to help for sure, to come and help. That I am a hero and everything like this. And this bullying, because of course I am not a fool. I saw this day by day, week by week. People lie to you. People put you in mortal danger, and no one helped. When they needed my help, they came every day. McGonigal called me every day. And this is the first time after his retirement I called McGonigal. And I say, really, because this Russian spy, he threatened to kill me. And I called McGonigal. 2 of my friends were already killed. Of course I was afraid. I called McGonigal. I told him that I'm ready for everything, and just to work for him until the end of my life, for free, by the way. He never paid me for the work. But I needed help. He again threw in tantrum. He was in panic. I told you not to communicate with anyone, not to contact with anyone. He was in panic that someone could know something about him. And he was really afraid, like a real criminal, you know. And he told no one will help you ever. And he was right. They not only didn't help me, they used this situation with Russian spy to completely destroy me. And it's a miracle that I survived, because I realized I found myself between 2 fires. I realized that I alone had to protect America from this Russian spy group, high-level spy group, by the way. And at the same time, people who had legal obligation to protect me, they tried to destroy me. And just using my problems with Russian spy. Of course, they didn't create him. I knew this guy. I knew a long time who he was. But they used this situation just to finish me off, because I was ready to fight with Russians, but I trusted them. I wasn't ready to defend myself from them. I waited for their help. And when they started to destroy me, yes, I wasn't ready to such a strike. I didn't know how to live in this condition.
So it sounds to me that there are several things going on here. First,
I still have PTSD. I have so the whole system covered him. And when this is the last point, when I solved my problems with Russia, by the way, it was probably one. I hope that it should be a movie someday, because it was a really serious and great counterintelligence operation. I was just extremely lucky that this Russian spy, he betrayed his own colleagues. He betrayed, not because he worked for the West, but he was not only spy, but also traitor. Now it happens frequently with Russians. He lied to his superiors. He used them. He betrayed them. He betrayed his own colleagues. He gave their names. He gave names of Russian double agents of the FSB. And then finally he tried to sell the whole list of Russian agents in Turkey for $4,000. Don't ask me why 4, why not 5 or 3. So that's, and his dream was to escape to the West.
That doesn't sound like a lot of money. I would have paid for it.
Yes, probably he did some money for something. I don't know. It's a steal. But but when I came to Turkey to check all this information, it was a really good counterintelligence investigation. I'm proud of it, really, frankly, still. The only it could be funny, but the only bad point is what FBI does to me when they try to destroy me, when they bullied me, lied to me, harassed me. And this was the main nightmare, because with Russians, I worked professionally. So he tried to sell his friends for his agents for thousands dollars. Yes, probably he managed to sell them this list in the beginning. They didn't want to buy it. It was a comedy. But unfortunately, he continued to work for Russia. He continued to deceive people. If the people were in Russia, he participated in repression and false denunciation on them. So he brought much. He threatened to kill me, not himself, but by Russian government. After all, so of course, my decision was just to destroy all his work. Yes, but he just was a traitor by his nature. He betrayed everyone. He couldn't be loyal to anyone. It's just a professional traitor. So I just collected evidences of his treason. And the problem was how to send these evidences to Russia, because it was absolutely illegal. It was illegal. It was a result of my own investigation. So I collected compromat on him, and I destroyed his work by Russia's hand. I found the way to send this compromat on him on Russia. So of course, before that, I warned all his victims, because victims is my priority. FBI, of course, didn't do it, didn't protect anyone. I warned his victims, and because I wasn't sure that I would be able to defeat him in Russia, but I had to protect victims anyway. By the way, one of people I warned about him is a current Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Rustem Umerov. And at that time he worked in Middle East on Crimean Tatar people, and they were one of his target. So I have a lot of witnesses. A lot of serious people know about this case. All victims which I warned, people which I helped to save from this spy group. Of course, they know this. As I said, I'm proud of this case. And after I finished all of this, I found a good source who sent this information to Russia and managed to solve this problem. It's probably he saved my life. But it wasn't disinformation. It was absolutely legal way to solve this issue. It was the real compromat, and Russians themselves destroyed the work of this spy group. So all the victims are safe, and he never came to the United States. People can sleep, have a good sleep, at least on this point, and everything is fine for now. All the project was closed, and all this group was completely destroyed.
But all of this is, is shocking for many reasons. First of all, Charles McGonigal, obviously, he was prosecuted for corruption, for illegal lobbying for Deripaska, illegal political activities and payments from the Albanian prime minister, and all of that is regular, run-of-the-mill corruption stuff. But it's obvious to me from everything you told me about his pattern of activity and communications with you that he was clearly also illegally handling assets and sources and intelligence analysts, and using their skills, such as yourself, and who knows how many other people he used in this
Actually,
manner.
some investigation journalists of media based in France told me that they found another person who also worked for McGonagall the same way as I did, so I wasn't
So
alone
this
for
is
sure.
exactly what I was referring to. See, there's probably a pattern, probably who knows how many. First of all, he used them illegally without reporting to the FBI. Second, he didn't pay these people, he used the help. And third, he probably used it against
Russians.
US interests. He probably used them to inform Russia.
For example, I didn't know, of course, about Deripaska when I worked for him, but I remember how he called me even from London. And he was very worried and asked me, how do I think? If Nastya Rybka, probably you remember this case, it was a prostitute who seduced Deripaska, and
Sure.
when Russians helped put her in jail in Thailand.
Yes, I remember that case very, very well. Yes.
Yeah, so he asked me how I think. Could Nastya Rybka, fish in English, it's her nickname, could know could have any real compromise on Deripaska. He was very worried. He told me that he wants to send people to her to jail to learn what she knew and so on. So I have doubts if he legally investigated something like that. By the way, he called me from London. And why a story about Pahomov is important? Just to point about after the end of this story. Of course, Pahomov, it was my separate case. It didn't have any connections with Deripaska or something like this. Moreover, to be
Well, could
precise,
you just tell
I
the
even
audience?
cannot blame Russian government in his threats.
Wait. Just tell the audience about the Pahomov case in case most people.
I don't know. It's the last name of Russian spy. I already
Oh,
told.
okay,
I
got it.
just didn't mention his name. Yes. So, and we cannot even blame Russian government for his threats, because it's turned out that he did it on his own initiative. He lied to Russian government. They even didn't know that he communicated with me so openly. They didn't. He lied to everyone. He was a pathological liar. So with him, it's understandable. But uh, uh, this story received interesting continuation. When I needed to solve my problems with Pahomov, of course, I needed some contacts in Russia, just to help me to destroy him with my compromise. This was obviously because I was alone. No one helped me here. And I found research in Russia. I cannot tell why he started to work for me, because it could help our enemies to identify the source. But what I don't know how to say it's safely for him. Let's say one time I saved his life almost. And I did it not alone, of course. What these criminals from the FBI don't understand, that I have a lot of witnesses of all my activity. My activity is absolutely transparent. Yes, probably some of my investigation are not so public, but I always have people who know about them, or I can't consult with, because anyway, I am civilian specialist. I need help with of real professionals. So frankly, fortunately, we have a lot of allied countries. And of course, I NATO countries, and I have connections, people, professionals who help me to assess sources. And here it also was a help of our allies. They know from the beginning everything about this, so they helped me to save him. They were sure that he didn't work for Russia anymore. They didn't work with him themselves just because of his some, let's say, psychological and personal problems. He's sometimes in his behavior, but anyway, he gave valuable information, and the information was confirmed. So and he helped me with Pahomov case, so he probably saved my life. And he helped me for 3 and more years. And, you know, as counterintelligence specialist, I can say only that every operative game, of course, I should always suspect disinformation. Of course, I always should suspect bias. It's my work. But I spent enough time on counterintelligence, I think, to detect such operations, because sooner or later, the purpose is obvious. They should ask you to do something, that should ask you for something. Or send disinformation, and someday it will be obvious that it's disinformation. So with time, it becomes obvious, especially if you're a professional. If 3.5 years, he never asked something in return, and his information was confirmed, you know, if something looks like duck, yes, how it's, I don't remember, it's flies like duck, probably it's duck. Probably it's real, because I didn't see any. He said me, he warned me about any FSB agents in my surrounding. He warned me about any dangers, because I knew that no one would protect me in the United States. By the way, in the end of my investigation on Pahomov case, the FBI finally came to me when I started to make public the harassment. They finally came to me directly. No one was interested in my case. No one. For hours, they interrogated me only about McGonigal. And it was obviously that they were interested only in, you know, in covering him, because in the end, they started to intimidate me. That I shouldn't tell anyone about McGonigal. And I asked them directly what to do if Russian will try to recruit me again. And they told me, go to local police.
Unbelievable.
So they officially told me yes. They told me, they said that they came from Seattle, but they told me that they received order to come from DC. They didn't care about national security. They didn't care about my cases, about Russian spies and violent investigations. They didn't want to hear, even didn't want to hear about Russian spies. They told that if they will try to threaten me or recruit me, I should go to local police. It's bullshit, because it's possible to go probably if someone tries to kill you here, but if someone tries to recruit it, local police doesn't do it.
Of course.
So it's was absolutely illegally. So they broke the law absolutely, completely. They told that they will not do those professional duty. And of course, I knew that as everything happens to me, I cannot go to them, because they will not only not to help, they will try to use my problems with Russia to destroy me, like they already did before. And no one will protect. And it's impossible to do anything against this lawlessness and corruptions. I already knew this from my own experience. So of course, I knew all these years. I lived in nightmare, because I knew that with any problems with Russians, no one will protect me, and they will especially use this to destroy me. I lived in a country which tried to destroy me.
All right.
And I knew this from my own experience of half of a year of total hell. And only this person from Russia, he was the only one who really helped me. Yes, it doesn't fit in current propaganda about Russian threat, that a person with Russian passport risked her life protecting America, that a former enemy helped her to survive, and the corrupted FBI tried to destroy me on the order of a traitor. McGonigal told me no one will help you. He was right. He knew what he was talking about.
But here's, I want to go back to a point that you made earlier, which is very, very important, and I think many people have missed it. When you were talking about your source, the one who saved your life, you mentioned very specifically that he warned you about corrupt FBI agents in your surroundings.
He did warn me. He warned me about it's even more interesting. He warned me about some FSB snitches. And before McGonigal arrest, We never talked about him. I think I already can say that I'm a counterintelligence professional because I have many successful cases and I started to suspect McGonigal. So I defeated a Russian spy group. So yes, I think I can call me a professional after that. And of course, as a professional, I didn't tell him anything about my work or my cases. He was my source, not an opposite. So he didn't know about my work with McGonigal. He before his arrest, he never heard his name from me. I mentioned that I had problems with some corruptionists. Yes, I gave him a nickname, New York pedophile. Yes. So yes, I don't say that he was a pedophile. It was just a nickname.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
I liked. Yeah. So, but people knew that I had some problems with some pedophile, but they had no idea it was McGonigal. So yeah, and of course he couldn't work me. He appeared after this situation, but after McGonigal arrest, the topic became public. And my source, he has a pathological habit just to talk and to talk. He was always talking, and it was his psychological need. He wrote bullshit in social networks. It was bullshit because, of course, he couldn't write what he really thought because he was afraid of Russians who were watching him. But in personal conversation, he told about everything. Even I didn't want to know his information. He talked anyway. And as I said, there were no reason for him to send this information because he knew how isolated I was. That I didn't work with any intelligence agencies, that I just was interested in social processes in Russian society. It's also very important to know that I had no interest for intelligence because I work from home all these years absolutely alone. After all these cases, I stopped any investigation. I just prepared a social analysis of what's going on in Russia. I wasn't involved in domestic American affairs. I was absolutely just an ordinary person. I wasn't do anything. So I didn't work in journalism any also in analysis. So I wasn't interested. I couldn't help him even accidentally. I worked from home and knew nothing. All my object of interest was only Russia. So I'm not a person who can spread disinformation or something like this. I'm just not the appropriate person. And so, it's another Charles McGonigal victim, Alison Guerreiro.
Wait. Yeah, we can talk
Yes,
about Ellison later, but
yes, but I don't know
yeah, just yeah,
how to. Okay,
yeah,
let
yeah,
me just check.
yes.
Oh,
So
yes,
I
I
want to
can
go
because
back to
I
this
cannot
whole.
look right now. Okay, so and yes, so he just talked constantly because I never met him in person, by the way.
Mhm,
It was a virtual acquaintance, but he had like friendly relationship and he needed to talk and he talked.
sure.
And when a McGonigal case became public, he started to talk about it. He had no idea that I had personal interest. Because when he told me information about some persons before, he knew that I never used this information. Anyway, he never so he couldn't expect any actions or something from me. It wasn't some disinformation campaign because
Sure.
officially he was afraid to confirm this information to American journalists, for example, when we tried to get his testimony after that.
Mhm,
No, I checked, especially it wasn't any disinformation campaign. So official position is deny everything. It's not the official position. So it's nothing. If they would to send disinformation, they would find American journalist and send this
sure.
information to them, not to me. He even didn't know that I knew McGonigal. And even when he provided me his information, I didn't want to tell it publicly until they started to destroy my life again. So it couldn't be any expectation. So as I said, any operative game has its purpose. With this guy, no purpose. He said that's just psychological need to do stupid things, and he did it.
So it seems
And he told me, yes, that he knew McGonigal personally. And he worked for Russian government before, and he's told me that McGonigal worked not only for Deripaska, he worked for the Russian government for decades and received millions of Russian money. And he, my source, one time gave him this money in London. And all these meetings took place in London.
So it seems to me,
Of course, we cannot confirm. As I said, this guy is covered. I mean, my source. He never confirmed it's to investigative journalists I worked with when we tried to get his testimony. But we tried to get his testimony. We tried to verify it, of course, because I know how these criminals try to blame people in wrong testimony. So I emphasize it's not my information. I cannot verify it. It's information from source. Yes, I don't have enough resources to verify it. But it's very interesting that when he gave me this information, because I said already, he's not too smart, he started to talk to his American friends. He had a lot of friends inside the US. I never met him in person, but he has people who he met in person in the US. He was very available online, you know, he was a public person, so he communicated with a lot of Americans actually. And much longer than he communicated with me. And he started to call his real friend, people he knew personally, and he started to talk to them about McGonigal. Not only to me. That was his main mistake. That I was not only person he provided social information. I don't know exactly who his friends are and what exactly he told them about McGonigal crimes, but at least he told them that indictment, on his opinion, doesn't reflect the whole scale of his crimes, and he knows more, and he knows McGonigal personally, and the system covers him up. And another point, why he started to talk them this, because I applied for citizenship, and I had a recommendation for expediting the process from not only Jamestown Foundation, from Foreign Service Institute of State Department, NATO headquarters. I have another gratitude from Eisenhower School from Pentagon, where I conducted in State Department counterintelligence briefing for participated in trainings of new diplomats. Now you know why, because I really have unique experience in counterintelligence. So that my work is the interest of the United States. Of course, FBI knew better than everyone else that everything is clear and transparent in my work, because you can imagine, I have a personal conflict with them. And 5 years after personal conflict, I worked on so high level, absolutely openly. They have personal motivation to arrest me. If I never had any problems with law, it's the best proof.
But
that
here's
even after personal confrontation.
but
So
I want
they
to
knew everything. They knew why I had to find Russian sources. They knew all my problems with Russia. They didn't help me in. They knew everything. Actually, they knew the whole story. But my husband, almost a former husband for now, we applied together and he was called for the interview. I wasn't. And when I started to talk with my American friends about this case, that the only thing that I think is problems with McGonigal, because I don't have any other problems. in this country. They told me that yes, you could be probably blacklisted. I just shared this case with my source because we had friendly relationship, and it's very hard to understand for people who don't know what PTSD is. I'm suffering from PTSD all these years. I woke up for almost a year with panic attacks. I couldn't forget this nightmare, and when I started to recover, the worst thing for a person with such problem, it's not death. I wasn't afraid of death. I wasn't afraid of anything. Main, the main fear, the main threat is re-traumatization. That you will have to immerse yourself in this nightmare again. That's what happened to me with these problems with citizenship. So for me, probably I overreacted, but it was understandable because of PTSD. Because for me, it was not just delay with citizenship. Especially I had recommendation letter to expedite the process. My husband didn't have such letters, but he was called for the interview. I wasn't. For me, it was a huge re-traumatization because I realized that people who already tried to destroy me, and now I knew why. I survived the previous case probably because I didn't know the scale of evil, and I still had hope that someone will help me. That's helped me to survive, but now I didn't have any hope. I realized that probably all this time McGonigal worked for Russia. Because yes, I couldn't confirm information from my source, but it coincides completely with my own experience.
And here's so everything you told me.
And after I started, I told him, and he started to talk to Americans about this case because he was shocked. Even he, a person from Russia, he was cynical enough, but in this case, he was shocked because he knew better than anyone else that I worked for America. He gave me information for this book even. Sometimes, of course, I always checked this information and never used anything without checking, but anyway, he tried to help. And when he started to talk, they realized, first of all, that he knows a lot because if it's true, he probably knew McGonigal personally, and he started to talk about it. He started to talk about it to Americans, and he knows me. That means that he already told me everything. So what could I feel? And they exposed themselves. It was very funny. Then they sent me a snitch. They started a new wave of personal terror against me. Not only citizenship, illegal detention in airports, where they didn't check my belongings. They didn't ask anything. They just mocked me that I was not a US citizen. Nothing except bullying and harassment. And they sent snitch to me. It was very funny because I already said that this guy, my source, he sometimes behaved not adequately. He wrote some bullshit on social networks, tried to demonstrate loyalty to Russian FSB, who probably watched him. It's always happens with traitors. It's normal behavior for them. For example, Pahomov tried to convince me that Russia is a piece of shit. He hated Russia. He wanted to escape from Russia. And after that, he went and wrote patriotic posts on Facebook. The more they betray, the more they try to demonstrate loyalty. It's normal thing. With my experience in counterintelligence, I saw this constantly. If someone talks something about patriotism, that means that he already works for someone in the West. So it's not natural. So it's actually nothing because, again, it didn't have any practical outcome. But that's how he found me. He started to write bullshit on my post and comments. Yes. But when he started to do it, he did it more than 3 years ago. It was just a midst of his activity because he was afraid of arrest in Russia. So he did it more actively. It's very funny, really, to work with Russian traitors, Russian sources. It's really funny because, yes, it's not Ryszard Kuklinski, believe me. It's people with not a high level moral quality.
Well,
But
all of this.
yeah, but the main point is that when he wrote this bullshit, he probably reached out to hundreds of people, not only me. It was the same period, almost some half of a year. So I think one guy reported about him because people cannot understand this phenomenon. Yes, and so they probably just checked the records. They found this report, and they sent him to me. It looked really funny because one guy who had no idea that I knew this person personally, that a guy with whom I didn't know even him. One time I expressed him my support for his pro-Ukrainian posts. That's it. And it was 3 years ago. He communicated with my source only 3 years before he reached out to me. And he started to ask me about him. He had no way even to know. He didn't even invent pretext why he started to ask about him 3 years after they just argued somewhere in social networks on comments. There's nothing more. So because I remember his behavior, I remember what he did, I remember how he wrote to me. That's absolutely the same scenario, and I understand the situation very well. And you know, so they don't know how to work because when I conducted real counterintelligence investigation and learned how to work from experience when I protected this country, they covered up criminal and traitor and tried to destroy his victims. They were too busy to learn how to work. And of course, they don't know how to work. They send me a snitch. So with snitches, everything is understandable. It's funny. Especially so many serious people knew about my search for more than 3 years, that everything was okay. And I discussed him with very serious security professionals abroad. It's not the problem, but the problem is the reaction. You know, it's part of my work. I conduct analysis on Russia, so if I have had sources in Russia, that means that I work properly. Of course,
they basically try to catch you
all people knew about that I use searches in Russia. As I said, my life is absolutely transparent. I have nothing to hide. I even never met him in person, but unlike his American friends, but its reaction tells me more about this than his words. They were in panic. I communicated with this person at that moment 3.5 years. No one cared. But when he started to tell about McGonigal,
they panicked and
they started to ask me about him. Yes. They were in panic. They started to snitch, to send me the stupid snitches. And of course, this citizenship situation became only worse because it's already outside of normal proceeding time. And
so
a congressman office sent an inquiry to them twice, and they just rejected him. Even the second time the case was out. I don't even tell about expedition process. Normal precedent time, out of normal precedent time, that they have to coordinate. You know, I sent you this message. Coordinate with some other agencies, so they even don't hide. We know what agencies are. It's something about national security. So, if someone else is someone from these so-called agencies, I call them mafia actually, but okay, agencies, have a bad memory about my background on national security, I will be happy to testify, I hope, in Congress hearing, in congressional hearing, about I have a lot to tell about my background and national security. A part of this I already told in this program, but I will be happy to repeat everything under oath, under polygraph, under everything. I have some evidence, and yes, I cannot check information of my source, but I think how they panicked about him, about my connection with him. That means that yes, we at least need to take it seriously, and even we forget about him. Okay, because it's yes, we don't have evidence. I cannot testify this information from my behalf. No, I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I know difference between operative information and facts. I know, but I can say about my experience, and I have a lot of questions about suppression of investigation, about his illegal actions. By the way, I thought that I didn't have witnesses of my work for McGonigal. Actually, I have his former girlfriend. I believe a hero,
Well,
Alison Gray.
I think this would be a great discussion for a panel with her and for
Yes,
and any other
and
relevant
she
parties.
heard how he called me.
But
And
mhm.
the last point, McGonigal called me, asked for about Deripaska from London. The
Yes,
same
you
city
mentioned
that
that.
my source mentioned, where they met with Deripaska.
So all of this brings us back to the points you were making earlier. First of all, the penetration of the FBI seems far wider than just one McGonagall. Seems that at the very
The
least,
whole system covered him. Absolutely, the system tries to destroy its victim. Ask Alison Guerrero how they
but
tried to
so
destroy
clearly,
her.
first of all, there is a systematic corruption. Second, there were probably likely other Russian moles who were sharing in whatever
We
he was.
don't know how many people received money and for how long.
So that's unclear, and that has never been investigated. Third, McGonagall's own involvement with Russian intelligence beyond Deripaska's illegal lobbying has never been examined, and it appears to be far.
I cannot state it because, of course, I wasn't witness of his communication. What I can say, let's again separate fact from opinions, because
Sure,
we know how these criminals try to blame the victims
sure.
for false testimony or something. Again, we don't know if he worked for Russian intelligence or not. What we have information from operative source. We have my own testimony that he lied, he suppressed investigation, they acted illegally, they deprived me on any help, they lied to me, everything what they did against me, they did illegally. We probably have the illegal interference in citizenship case. I also will be very, very happy to investigate what's going on now, because there are no legal reasons not to call me for the interview. It's all terms, and it's I hope that people will investigate. Some people already started to investigate what's going on, and I ask other government agencies not to participate in these dirty games, because I am sure that it's illegal form of pressure of witnesses.
And but this is all brings me back to the point you originally made in the beginning of the discussion, which is this sort of systematic corruption, this sort of illegal activity by government agencies. It undermines trust. It undermines trust in the U.S. government, its ability to protect its own interests, its role in national security apparatus, and it actually, ironically, the more these people infiltrate and the more they cover up for the infiltration and the more they cover up for embarrassment for the agency, the more they actually create a public perception. They send a message to the public that the US intelligence cannot be trusted, and this feeds into the
That's why
Russian
yes, and
narrative.
Russia
This is
uses
to bring back to this whole exploitation of ideologies. Quite frankly, it's funny, Russia works on both fronts. First, it feeds and exacerbates political division
but
and distrust, but it also feeds
the
this
only
distrust.
way to prevent Russia from uses such problems is to solve these problems. Otherwise, Otherwise, if these problems will continue to exist, all hostile countries, North Korea, I don't know, Russia, China, Iran, all countries will use that, because if I would be a hostile government, of course I will use it. How it's possible not to use? It's so
Here's the irony from French radical left and radical right groups. This sort of distrust is becoming mainstream, and Russia's ideology for expert is becoming more successful rather than
Russia
leading.
tries to create alternative. And for me, it's very dangerous tendency that, of course, I understand that people need symbol. It's not the problem that Tucker Carlson took an interview with Vladimir Putin. It's a problem because in this interview, Vladimir Putin so much exposed his inadequate worldview that probably it's even useful. He confirmed everything that I wrote about him in my analysis, actually. And in this point, I'm even grateful to Tucker. But the problem is, because of this corruption, because of all this total lawlessness, which, for example, we cannot even solve the problems with citizenship because of total lawlessness. They abuse their power. They don't have legal tools to influence. They do it illegally, but we cannot do anything about it. So, because of all of this, of course, people have a social demand, a social request for radical discontent, radical dissidents. And Putin started to symbolize these radical dissidents, because Tucker Carlson, I think it's bullshit that he worked for Russia. It's also propaganda. He doesn't work for Russia. He works for money and for his audience, which brings him money. He's just a good showman. I don't believe that Tucker was so interested in seeking the truth, but he's a showman and he knows what his audience wants to hear. And they needed some radical dissidents. By the way, I think he was honest when he told reason why he took this interview. He said, because American special services tried to forbid me to do it by illegal methods. So it's like
here's the thing. If Tucker Carlson has been trying to arrange this interview for several years. Tucker Carlson was directly in touch with Putin's people. Of course, NSA and other parties would have been surveilling any U.S. citizen who was in touch with the.
It's not about surveillance. It's about prevention.
Country.
It's about prevention that they send his private messages to some liberal media, and in this point, he's right. If you can find,
if he can prove that happened, so far, I haven't seen any evidence of his comments. I've heard him say that several times. I haven't seen him actual evidence of showing of private communications appearing.
Yeah, it's even not about him. It's just an illustration of the problem. The problem is that he told that I did it because they forbidden me to do it. That's what he
basically he's feeding into
what does it mean? I don't even discuss is it true or not.
Right.
Ground to say that or not. I mean, what does it mean? It means one word: rebellion. It was a form of rebellion. They tried to forbid me. I decided to do it.
So essentially, the ineffectiveness of American narrative right now, it's simply trying to stifle any criticism of internal problems and blame everything on Russia, and thus it creates this very immature kind of gravitation towards this alternative, even though that alternative is not actually good for anybody.
It's a very dangerous tendency for me that Putin began to become a symbol of American rebellion. Probably, yes, people have right for this rebellion. I understand it. By my own experience, I also want to drive this corruption swap.
Sure.
Absolutely. I am its direct victim. I know everything about this lie, propaganda, corruption, treason
But Putin is
regime
not solution. He's
after
an
my story.
exacerbating factor. He feeds off of it.
But Putin uses this, and it's very dangerous because I think American people deserve much better symbol for the rebellion than a serial killer.
Mhm.
And yes, and you know, it's very stupid. I understand that it happens frequently that your own government doesn't care about you, doesn't care about people, and care only about money. Yes, it's unfortunately it's a common thing. But who could decide that the hostile government would care about you? A hostile government which doesn't care even about its own citizens and sends them to die.
This is absolutely true.
Doesn't care about anyone at all. I'm about Russia now. Yes, because not Russia helped me. I just told that we shouldn't blame people by citizenship, that a Russian citizen helped me. Yes, because that means the situation is
But
not
the
black and
Russian
white. And
regime, the
if you're talking
Kremlin,
about Russian threat, as I said, the only real way to fight it is to solve internal problem, because otherwise any hostile countries will use them. And the only way to solve this problem, not to prosecute people for the citizenship, because it's just increase this impunity. How
but we
McGonigal
have
told
to
to me.
create institutions that are transparent, that are accountable, and that
Yes,
actually care
accountable.
about national security, and not, demonizing people who are whistleblowers and people who expose their problems. They need to be focused on.
Of course, because they
They
blame
need to
the
be
victim.
actually finally brought to understand that this is how enemies of the US exploit. They exploit distrust, and they actually fight in two fronts.
Frankly, I even didn't want to go public with this story. I dreamed about not my life. And recovering from PTSD. I'm suffering from PTSD for years. I just wanted to forget about all of this, but they started to destroy my life again. And about citizenship, you know that after everything what I did for the United States, it's possible to survive for me with Russian citizenship. It's now I have to fight for my survival again. I had to go public. And because they need protection. Of course, people who go public, they are mostly victims, nothing more. They fight for their life because the country betrayed them. Do you remember probably case of Jan Newman, Alexei Artamonov, that he worked for the US for 10 years and they tried to send him back in Russia. So he also had to go public because for him it was the only way to survive. You probably remember that Vladimir Karamurza, who is arrested in Russia now, he had to sue the FBI because they concealed the results of his poisoning investigation.
Well, isn't that part of the same problem?
It's like
now
that
that you
they work
mentioned
as a
that.
part of FSB. They help FSB to persuade Russian dissidents who protect America. And it's not the first case in the total system. My boss talked to Senate Intelligence Committee. They tried to receive results investigation of McGonigal from the FBI. They couldn't. So they sent to hell congressmen, senator members. No any government agency can do anything about this. They used another government agencies to destroy people's lives by illegal methods. And we cannot do anything without such a corruption. We have to go public because it's impossible to solve our problems, because it's impossible for any normal person to fight themselves so high-level corruption. So I ask all American patriots, I understand, with my experience, I totally understand why people support Donald Trump. But the problem is that even Donald Trump cannot solve this problem, because I didn't hear that he suggested to make this system more accountable. What we need responsibility, because they know that they will never had responsibility. Just last case as example, which everyone knows, case of Maria Butina. It's public case. that all American media started this propaganda that she was a Russian spy. No, my dear, she wasn't a Russian spy. She was a lobbyist. A lobbyist. What is the difference of lobbyist and spy? That she didn't deceive anyone. I read her indictment and materials on her case in open sources, of course. I didn't know her before, but what she did, what I read from indictment, by the way, that she sent some plan to her American friends, to senators, to Congress members, and to her lovers, who were senators and so on. And he suggested, asked them to help her in some project, which is, she said, was approved directly by Vladimir Putin. It's direct quote from his indictment. So I have doubts that these projects were approved directly by Putin. She probably exaggerated her abilities, but the problem is that he boasted, he never concealed it, that all people who helped her, they agreed deliberately, consciously agreed to help with project which they thought was approved directly by Vladimir Putin. They helped to bring Russian officials here, to develop some connections for Russian officials for their official business, and so on. So they are not victims. All American media tried to show them as victims. She infiltrated, no.
But they were
They betrayed their
willing.
homeland, deliberately betrayed their homeland for sex. They knew who she was. They knew what she suggested to them. She wasn't illegal spy who pretended to be American or French or Canadian. She came and asked them to help, and they agreed. And I never saw the press information which I received from my source about some things that they did in the US. It's group sex and in DC. Okay, I have no evidence. I will not talk about them, but it's a shame. And McGonigal case, it's a shame. They disgraced not only the organization, they disgraced the US, because I talked with colleagues. They know about McGonigal everything, not from me. They had no doubts in my story because they already knew everything. It's obviously for everyone, because Deripaska was declared a foreign agent, a agent of Russian government in the US, and they even mentioned this fact in indictment. They pretended that he was a private person. So it's obviously for everyone. It's a shame. That's why allies don't trust to the US. People from NATO countries, from allied countries, serious people asked me only one question. Do you know what their secrets McGonigal betrayed to Russia? They had no doubts that he betrayed. They just was interested how much and what exactly.
That's shocking.
Because it probably was not $4,000 like Pahomov asked. So it's a great amount, of course. It's still mystery for me why 4,000.
Well, thank you.
So anyway, it's a shame. And impunity, and what Butina case showed to them, that you can blame Russian girl and everything. Of course, in this case, she also was guilty. I never said that she wasn't guilty, but they were guilty more than she.
And
because
those people were never investigated and never suffered any consequences, and so
never.
This
People
is
who
right to
deliberately
continue.
They're not victims, they're criminals. They're more guilty because she was just one. She came, remember, to the United States first time, not as a student, just a member of delegation. So he was just one of many Russians who built these connections for years. So today it will be she, tomorrow it will be someone else.
This is corruption.
It's not that Americans are ready to betray the country because of total impunity. They know that they will never take any responsibility. I faced with people, victims of corruption here in the United States from immigration police who asked asylum on Mexican border. And other people, they faced with huge abuse and corruption, and they, even if they won trial, not all people have money and moral strength and time for lawyers for long trials. They won trial, but these corrupted
this
officials
impunity
didn't
is
have any
actually
responsibilities.
Actually, this corruption is the greatest US vulnerability. What Russia
In
is
Europe, such people in Western Europe, at least, such people would never work at the same place. But here, these criminals continue to work at the same place. McGonigal is under arrest, but all people who covered him, it's lawlessness like in Russia, you know? That's total lawlessness, no responsibility. And they will, okay, I went public, probably I will find support and my case will be resolved. But they will stay on the same place with no responsibility. They will find new victims. And this discrimination on passport, it really increases this impunity because like McGonigal told me, no one will believe you because you're from Russia. Because if we face with any discrimination, we know that all criminals will use it, first of all, to hide their crimes behind the color of their passports, which I faced with. McGonigal was not alone. I faced with other abuse or sexual harassment, real sexual harassment, with some people from so-called American intelligence community demanded.
I have to wrap up because I've got another call after this. But you know what you're telling me is shockingly bad. I think every part of what you said needs to be investigated. I hope this program will reach the right people and will start not just conversations but actual actions. And until then, while this impunity continues, Russia can export any ideology, any extremism, any form of disinformation and propaganda easily, because people have come to distrust in the system so much that they would rather believe their own enemies than
the last point is probably bad comparing, but even some Russians were grateful to me that I exposed their traitor. I mean, Pahomov. Of course, it wasn't my goal. I just needed to solve my problem. But anyway, he was a traitor and I exposed him. But Americans tried to destroy me when I exposed the traitor.
This just shows you how these
institutions
have been corrupted and rotted from within, and all of this needs to be exposed. Thank you so much for joining us today, for your courage, for your hard work, and for this important story. For those watching the program, we'll be back next week, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. as usual, the Washington Outsider Report.